if you can map how the stream of the water moves in the Adriatic. This means that if someone falls from a boat, you can say in 30 minutes, this person is going to reach that point, so I can save that person. Or if there's an oil spill and a big cargo boat spill oil, where is it going to evolve? How can I block it before it actually reaches the beach? So their whole project was about saving people and potentially saving huge biodiversity and environmental problems. But he said it at the very last minute, when everyone was already dead. And so we went for lunch, and the guy completely lost his audience with 25 minutes of attention. The real reason is because he started by explaining all the things which are not fundamental and saving for the last minute why they did it, the problem they were actually tackling, and the solution they put in place. In fact, it's a common thing in storytelling when people do not have a structure, is that instead of helping others understand the main challenge and let them think by themselves what could be the best solution, we tend to talk to them like if they were dumb, explain every technical thing before, and keep it like if it was a big revealing moment at the end. Hey, actually, that was a problem we were saving. That's the worst structure ever. So today, we're going to do exactly the opposite and start with a problem. So we're going to use this template in the last 20 minutes of the session, and you're going to have to describe your own project in that template. That is the most powerful structure of storytelling you can find for your kind of jobs. So if you masterize that, you already have the script for a video, you already have the script for a press release, you can convince anyone that your project is important. If you don't follow that structure and reinvent the wheel, you're going to struggle much more. So I'm giving you the key to actually make it happen. This scientist could completely change the world with just a good structure. My name is Charlelie Jourdan. I'm 35 years old. I'm French. I'm a creative consultant, which means I'm working to solve problems all the time, and I'm paid for that. I'm putting my email address. I put it there as well for one reason, is that I always answer to everyone who have been following my trainings, and I can answer to you even 3 or 4 years from now. I've trained more than 2,000 people. I still receive questions and challenges, and I always answer. And by the end of this session, once you have filled that one, you will potentially have the first block to shoot a video to make something happen. If you want me to revise it, I will do it for free. So you just send me that thing in a digitalized version, ideally, so you input it on a computer, and I will take the time to give you feedbacks and make it better, okay? So just do it once you already have a project and you're about to communicate on that. I will take the time. So take my email address, and I have a weird name, so that's easy to find me on LinkedIn. I publish every 10 days now a video answering one of the challenges of the people who shared challenges with me. I have already 300 challenges, so I haven't recorded 300 videos yet, but that's the idea. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you will know when I release a new video. Okay, what I'm not. I'm not a copywriter. A copywriter is someone who writes scripts and who's very good at that. I'm not that person. I'm not a digital storyteller, which is another way of saying copywriter in the modern world. And I'm not a videographer either. The best videos I've done are for my holidays, and that's for my parents. So very limited target audience. But I hire these sort of guys all the time. And I've been working on more than 400 projects of communication in the last year, so I have plenty of very good people I work with, but I don't do the work myself because I know I'm not good enough to do it, okay? What I am, so at least that's something. I'm pretty good at strategy. Actually, I rank myself pretty high in strategy because I've proven to deliver results each time when I build strategies. In creative as well, creative professionals, that means I'm not creative as a painter. I'm creative in finding solutions which are different from other obvious solutions you will find, and I'm paid for that. And a lecturer, you will tell me, I hope I will be okay. In the next year, this is where I want to be, and I have no intention of making better holiday videos. So let's start with the classic way you do stories, or you feel stories. Everyone is very good at feeling good stories. You always read books, I'm pretty sure, watch movies, and you can detect if the movie is great or not, or the book is great or not. And that's all about our perception of stories, and we are very, very naturally capable of doing that. But it doesn't mean because you can like or dislike a book that you can write one. That's another job. And that's a job of a storyteller, someone who can write a book. There is one classic, we will see dramatic triangle, it's called, in stories, and about 90% of Hollywood movies follow this particular scheme. So Star Wars is one of them. Romeo and Juliet, very big story for the last 400 years and more. I'm into girl power at the time, so Hunger Games as well, if you've seen it. And they all answer this particular theory called the dramatic triangle or the Cartman theory. And you will see a direct application of that right now in a small video, which was a psychological experiment done in the 1940s. Okay? And I will ask you actually, what did you see in this video? Okay, did you see something in these videos? In this video, did you notice a plot, something happening? What would it be, more or less, very quickly? Someone who wants to answer?
Maybe a fight for the mom.
Fight, okay, excellent.
Yeah, fighting.
Superb. There were 3 different characters. You could feel that: big triangle, small triangle, and a little circle. And the whole experiment is about seeing if with basic shapes and absolutely no real plot, by moving these little shapes, people would interpret that as a story. And so obviously that's what happens. We tend to put in this small triangle someone, and a story is happening, and the big triangle is trying to catch over the small circle, and the little one comes at the rescue. Okay? So that's your brain working non-stop to interpret stories. This is what you do non-stop as a human being. You listen to something and you try to put yourself in the shoes of one of the characters. What would I do if I was this character? So this particular triangle and dramatic construction is used, as I said, in 90% of the movies. And we have 3 characters: the victim, someone to who life is quite bad, the hero, and the villain. Okay, so you can think about the latest movies you've seen. If they are action movies, 100% this structure all the time. Most other movies also use that. So this dramatic triangle, you will also find it with persecutor, rescuer, and victim. When you don't have a big idea in storytelling, that's a good way to start. As I said, 90% of movies are done in this way. But you will see that's gonna be more useful for you to convince other storytellers who are already working on this sort of narrative to work for you. That's the whole training today. On the persecutor level, I just want to list some of them. A disease could be one, financial crisis, terrorist, sharks, if you've seen Jaws, dinosaurs, Jurassic World, a jealous lover becoming adult, and the biggest villain of all, Darth Vader. Eurosceptics are a big persecutor in the mind of a lot of people working in Brussels. Huh? The thing is, it all starts with that. We are 7 billion humans. We all love story, but one thing is for sure, no one cares about what you do. No one cares. Not even usually your own love partner care about what you do. But your job is to make people care. That's why we are working in communication. We need the people, we need others, and we need them to care about what we do. So your job as a communicator is doing exactly that. And for doing it, you need some sort of tools to make people care. I want to very quickly take a divergent road because I think this particular mental model is amazingly important to understand very quickly in the life of anyone, but especially in the sort of project you're handling. And that's what we call the sphere of concern. All the things you're interested in life about, but you have no direct impact on. So for instance, one of them would be Brexit. A lot of people at the moment are very concerned about Brexit. Some others, migrant crisis in the Mediterranean Sea. Some others, how to make people love the EU, big, big concern. And possibly funding of the next Interreg program. Your sphere of concern, most often you change the elements to what concerns you. You have absolutely no influence on them. Brexit, you can gesticulate as much as you want, you will not change the Brexit. How to make people love the EU? If you don't have a budget of many billion euros, you're not going to make it happen. Even DG.com at the moment, who's spending 500 million euros per year, doesn't make it happen. They lost a complete country, so I mean, it's not very good. What happens is that in the middle of that, you have your sphere of influence, the things you have a direct influence on if you work logically, pragmatically, and well. And for instance, I'm thinking about your project, and I think some of these could be in your influence sphere. Increase the number of users of a project. You're all working on a project for solving a problem for someone. Your job as communicator could be to increase the number of people we actually help. Whether they are companies or public authorities or actual customers like you and me, you can increase with good communication the number of people concerned. You can send great stories to the program or to the DG Regio or to whoever you can send great stories so that they can resell these sort of stories. Each time you're doing a great project, if you have a great story to tell afterwards, people take inspiration from that. And actually, you can even directly inspire the next generation of project leaders who will come with much more powerful proposals in the end. That's something you can do because you are into a project. If you make it great, others will do. That you have a direct influence on. So it's called the sphere of influence. And what happens when you actually work on that influence? Well, your influence grows over time and possibly reach at one point some of your concerns. But if you start with that, and you actually know the model, this is whether lazy thinking or it's actually a way to not do anything because you will never change that directly. It's impossible. You need a lot of intermediate steps which are here. If you share great stories about the EU, we have about 10,000 projects in Interreg at the all European level. Imagine that only 500 of them share great stories. What happens? A lot of people are going to love the EU much more because they know what happens. But they are not going to love to receive 20 pages about the project explaining what it is. They're going to love possibly a 3-minute video or someone else telling the story like a journalist and saying, oh, we discovered this project is amazing. So we need to focus on that one, and this is the second step we're going to focus today during the workshop. I recommend reading eventually, if you're interested in this model, this book. It's very small, and it's because I'm not going to read it, but you will receive the slide, and you can watch and read that particular resource. There will be a lot of asterisks like that during the presentation. Why are we communicating in the public sector? That's important to understand the problem and what we're facing as a big challenge. Do you know more or less how much the music industry in the world, so the entire music industry, all the albums, artists and the rest, is generating of revenues, more or less in $1 billion? That's a very difficult question, but how much would you say? More than 10, more than $100 billion for the music industry? Well, I'll start with that one because obviously you need an anchor in your mind. That's $18 billion industry, everything in music. The film industry, movies, is it larger or smaller than the music industry? Larger. It's actually more than 4 times larger. So that's a really big providers of stories in the world. The video game industry, larger than film or smaller than film? It's now larger for the last decade. Sorry for the contrast on the slides, I can't handle that. $120 billion a year in video games. The communication industry, marketing, communication, advertising, the industry you are working on, is it larger or smaller than that? It's the rest of the slide. $530 billion a year as an industry. You're working in one of the largest industries in the world, where dozens of millions of people work, are trained, and sell products to others. Or sell ideas if you work for the public sector. We can even divide that more. Video games, why is that so big, the communication part? It's because 40% of the budget of a video game is spent in marketing. That's huge. And I will come back to you. 50% of a movie is actually about selling it in marketing and communication and PR. not producing it. It costs more to sell it than actually produce the movie. It's kind of crazy. Then you have big industries, public relations. Public relations is influencing press to talk for free about your story. That's a very big, big industry as well. Google, Facebook, advertising networks. They are offering a free service, but what they are doing, they are actually reselling the attention of people who are using Google or reselling the attention of people who are using Facebook. You can take advantage of that because you're working in the industry, but most people do not understand that these are advertising networks and not nice people offering a free service. And then for the one interested, you have 4 huge agencies, WPP, Publicis, Interpublic, and Omnicom. That's the EU budget spent in communication every year. And that's the US budget. Okay, so the public sector, can you relate the scale of what we spend compared to the rest of the world spending to sell crap? Very small. Please.
The reason you didn't include the book industry is because it's too small, it wouldn't show.
The book industry? Yeah, the publishing industry is actually pretty big. I think it's around 10 billion or 12 billion. I should include it, you're right. Next time. Totally. So, most people will tell me, and by the end of this workshop, and tonight at the dinner, and tomorrow afterwards, you will say, yeah, but the guy is always talking about advertising and communication, and I don't like advertising, and I don't think I do the same job. You do exactly the same job. You use exactly the same tool, the same thinking processes. The objectives you have is different. The objective is to sell a good idea to people so that they can use your services in a brilliant way. The other one is selling shoes, selling whatever, cornflakes. But the tools we use are exactly the same. So I took a good advertising that I like, and you will tell me if you don't like advertising afterward.
This is the second attempt the East Germans made a break in. We could be at an important point of the race here.
Viel Glück und viel Sieg.
Can they outsprint each other? Which one is the faster? Just over 300 to go. Going second place from Register and Trubitsky now beginning to get away.
It's written break free. Okay, who completely disliked this advertising? Completely disliked it? Okay, usually we have quite good reaction to this particular one. What is the story about? What does it say? Do you recognize the dramatic triangle behind it that I was talking about just before? So there is a prosecutor, in this case, the persecutor, in this case, the institution, the system. You have a real person who's a victim, but try to go forward. And all his friends, quite universal things, rescue him, and a very powerful message behind it. So it's for Adidas. Why would Adidas do this sort of advertising? What would they do? Why would they tell this sort of stories to people?
Because they want to increase the selling of other people.
Yeah, that's a cynical direct relation is absolutely true. In the middle, you have another thing growing is a brand awareness and the values you capture from Adidas. So you believe much more in that than in another brand that wouldn't tell a very inclusive and powerful message. So that's, if you want to check, it's called brand marketing, building a brand. To build a brand like that, it's amazingly complex and it takes a lot of time and money. So it's not something that usually I would recommend to any European project, is to build a brand, because that's one of the hardest tasks you can have. A brand means all the values you associate to something and people recognize it. That's very powerful. I wanted to show this particular video for one reason. It's not done by Adidas. It was done by students in a school of advertising in Baden-Württemberg in Germany. They are extremely good, but these are students. So imagine a little bit the level of experienced storytellers if students can reach that level of quality. These are real storytellers working for years on storytelling, practicing their craft every day and getting better at convincing others. I'm going to show you a completely different structure of storytelling. This one that takes a project, a real project that happened, and tell the story of how that project came to be, how it came into existence, okay? And I want you to notice now that difference. It's not telling you something directly, it's showing you great performance, and you associate that particular project to a success, okay?
Air pollution kills nearly 7 million people a year globally, including 10,000 just in London. But because it's scientifically complicated and largely invisible, most people don't realise just how serious the issue is. So Plume Labs, an environmental technology company, set out on a mission to save city dwellers from air pollution by making it impossible to ignore. Introducing the Pigeon Air Patrol, the world's first flock of pigeons who fly around London monitoring air quality in real time on Twitter. 10 pigeons were fitted with custom-made backpacks that measure nitrogen dioxide, ozone and volatile compounds. Each day in rush hour, when air pollution is at its most deadly, the pigeons were released from various locations around London. Going where no bike, car or drone can go, they flew across the city, quickly gathering pollution data. Anyone tweeting their location at Pigeon Air got an instant update on air pollution in their area from the pigeons. With a touch of wit, the Air Patrol brought to life the health risks associated with poor air quality and encouraged people to protect themselves with practical advice from the Plume Air mobile app. Not bad for a pigeon. In 3 days, the Pigeon Air Patrol was featured in more than 2,000 global news stories.
Pigeon.
Pigeon.
Pigeon Air Patrol.
Could you give us another way of thinking of pigeons?
Nearly 40,000 conversations online use the hashtag PigeonAir, delivering more than 667 million impressions through PR and social. 93% of those engaged told us they felt differently about pollution now. And we even managed to crowdfund new Plume Labs sensors, which 100 Londoners will beta test in their everyday lives. Data, feathers and tech innovation. The Pigeon Air Patrol.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure some of you will check afterwards on the internet. I send the links as well, so you can find back the case studies. But do you understand what is the difference between the first story and this one? In this case, we use a real project, and we tell the story of how it came into existence. So what was the project about? Anyone can answer, that's good to practice. Environmental protection, okay. The quality of air, how to sample it fast. Okay, any other big problem you've heard at the beginning?
Raise awareness on pollution.
Raise awareness. Another way of saying it is that people did not care about air pollution, and that was a good way to make them care, because it's a funny campaign, and because it's a funny campaign and with a crazy idea, what happened is that some other people talked about it. Do you remember when there is a spiral on a purple color? What was it? All the newspapers, all the big TV channels talked about it because it was a nice, funny story to tell. So these guys made it big enough so that others could get the awareness that it existed. Okay? So that's not the project directly who raised awareness to the people. It's raising awareness of the journalist to tell that story. Okay? And make it so nice that you couldn't mistake it. So it all starts with the project, and the project in this case is retold via a video. This video helps some people who did not know it happened to understand everything in less than 3 minutes. Did you understand everything in less than 3 minutes? Pretty much, right? Do you need 20 pages of report to understand every sub-segment of this project? Maybe you want to read the report entirely of this project, but at least you're interested first. You didn't have directly the report in front of you. So to the little story, these sort of things are called advertising case studies. And advertising agencies, they do case studies all the time because it generates direct awards and money thanks for these awards. Do you have an award that exists for cohesion policy? Like a big award where you can pitch a story and maybe you're going to get recognition? Yeah? The Regio Stars. Who has been introducing a Regio Star project already? One person? Excellent. How did you pitch it? Was it sending a video or that it paper-based or?
No, we invite all the projects in Algarve to take part in the contest.
Okay, and how do they register to the contest themselves? They send back,
Send the application, yes.
and the application is written.
Yes.
Okay, so same thing for advertising, but instead of written, you prepare a case study. This is why it's so much more powerful to actually win a competition, is because in 3 minutes people can understand it. A jury member of a competition watch about 80 to 100 case studies per day. So it has to remember your particular case study. This structure is based exactly on that particular structure of storytelling. It's independent from the great project of Pigeon Air Patrol. Could be a project much less sexy, but as long as you respect the structure, you can tell whatever story in less than 3 minutes. Whatever story. Now I'm raising the expectation. I will need to prove that I'm right. Well, I already covered that. For the little idea, in this case, you don't want to raise the brand marketing, but we are looking for public relations. Public means we want a positive image. You can read more about public relations later. But now I'm taking the example all the time of private companies. In the case previously, that was interesting because it's an NGO that make technology. Let's take Pepsi. Do Pepsi also make projects, and do they tell the story about their project? So Pepsi is a $65 billion company, and they sell water with sugar and potato chips. That's a great mission in life. The EU is spending more or less the same amount of money to provide solidarity wherever public services were not already reaching, because countries didn't do something yet. You're there with EU projects, and you help people achieve more. So let's see what Pepsi and how Pepsi sell its project when they do projects. And try to think about the project you're working on now, or previous project, and tell me you're selling it as well.
We need shelter, food, light.
Ang mga puno ay nag-iiyakan sa labas, mahirap makabili ng petrolyo.
Ngayon, unti-unti ko na mayroon ng hope sa dami nung tumutulong sa amin, and then the light, the scam, andito na po. Hawak-hawak ko na po.
So if you look at this project, right, the story is well told, no? You understand the project in less than 3 minutes, right? Less than 2 minutes even. What do you think about Pepsi now? That Pepsi is actually doing a pretty good job, right? No matter if you're against or for Pepsi, we can acknowledge that they did a great transformation in Philippines with that particular project. Do you think it's a big project or a small project compared to yours? So putting bottles of light in the Philippines, they might have covered, what, 1,000 families maybe? 2,000 families? In terms of scale, what do you think? It's larger or it's smaller than what you do in general? I think it's smaller, right? But the way they tell the story makes it look much bigger. And the brand is getting all the positive attitude they need because they actually did the project. So the biggest problem is not to actually tell the story right, is to do a great project in the first place, something you are doing every day, but you're really bad at telling the story. This is why I'm actually here. I've been training more than 2,000 people, as I said. It's not an isolated case. So I'm not talking and judging anyone. I know it's difficult to get this sort of mechanism. What I think about your mission, and you will tell me, it's a quick conversation, because I always struggle to understand what you do as communication officers in this field. So I've made my own definition. And my definition is that you communicate about EU project so that people who face a specific problem know there is a solution and are motivated to use that solution. What do you think about that definition of your job? Yeah, please.
They don't not always have a problem.
Okay.
So it's not necessary that people...
Let's take your project. What are you working on? If I'm going to bounce answering question and answer like that. So what is the project you're working on at the moment?
Our project is about sustainable tourism. So
sustainable tools? Tourism, okay. So you're not solving a problem with that? That the tourism might not be that sustainable at the moment? What are you doing concretely to solve that problem at the moment?
this is the problem of the people that they are going to use the project, or is it more general?
You have a global problem. I can imagine that tourism at the moment is not super sustainable. I can imagine that. It's a fraction, sustainable tourism, of the global tourism in the world at the moment. What is the project about, more specifically?
It's about, specifically, okay. It's about sustainable tourism in mountainous areas near the Mediterranean Sea.
Okay, and what do you do for that? What is the project doing for addressing that big field?
About concentrating tourists in specific areas that are not so well developed.
Okay.
Instead of sea or the summit that are very developed and have large flows of tourists there.
And so you're promoting alternative destinations which are more sustainable, for instance, so that people can be diverted from mass tourism areas to more to other areas. Super. So you have a problem, I think, and you're doing a great job at solving it with that particular project. Would you agree? I think we have a problem and we have a good solution. And every time you are doing that, as communication officer, your main job is to convince more public authorities or smaller destinations to actually develop a sustainable tourism plan, for instance, something like that, or directly talking the tourists to move to other areas. Which one would be your main job?
It's both, but mainly directly with the tourists.
Superb, excellent. So you are trying to push that solution onto tourists so that they use it, and by using it, we solve a little bit better the problem. So our influence in this case is very direct, pushing for more tourism. If that mission is well done, then you can tell it to others. That's where a case study starts to come in, such as policymakers, journalists, managing authorities. Okay? So you're putting in place a project, and these guys want to know. They just don't know how to ask for it. Usually they ask for a report, which is completely crazy because they don't read it. But policymakers, all the guys in Brussels, they are craving for these particular stories. I'm pretty sure you filmed any sort of tourist going there and saying like, hey, actually I've discovered a new place thanks to that. That's amazing. And I'm not trapped with the mass tourism. I'm discovering a new region and I actually are less guilty of spending my money there. Journalists, managing authorities, same thing. People want to hear the story, but we need a way to make that story faster to tell. Okay? So basically, your job is to be sure that people learn that there is a solution and motivate them to use it. Once that is working, you can retell the story afterwards and say, hey, look at that. We did such a great job. In 2 years, we managed to put 10,000 tourists into these new destinations. And I'm like, oh my God, that was super well invested as money. They really cleared a new field. You can do a case study when you start as well. So you're promising to people that you're going to do that. That's very good for having journalists who will follow the project over 2 or 3 years to see if it worked. You engage your reputation that it will work. Okay? So a case study is not limited to the end, but you can pitch before as well. So we're going to do that right now during 1 minute. You're going to work. Don't work on the template, or if you do, try to just put that on the side. Ideally, use another page. You're going to have 1 minute to answer these 3 questions for your own personal project. If you don't have a project, think about something you're working on as a hobby or whatever, but ideally you have a project. So what is the problem you are solving? I want to be sure of that. Who are you helping? Okay? And the last one, how do you help them? That is a tool you use. That's the core of your project. So I'm putting 1 minute. You can write on another paper. I will just ask for some people to help me with their own stories. Top. And that's it. 1 minute is fast, huh? Okay, who wants to try? It's a bit like playing tennis and watching a tennis match. If you play, you actually get better. Watching the tennis match doesn't help. So, would anyone wants to try? Yeah, super.
My problem in my job, child abuse. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Who are I helping? I think the childs who are in risk to be abused.
Mm-hmm.
And then how can I help them? Because I'm the authority of protection. You know?
Mm-hmm.
But I think I need to look for the collaboration of the population,
Mm-hmm.
mainly the collectives, education or health system. They are in contact, in really close contact with the kids, and they can detect some signs.
Okay, superb. So, did we all heard at least what's your name? Sorry, Ricardo has said about his project. Have you heard about it? No. Okay, I'm just reformulating, and you tell me if it's that. So Ricardo is working to prevent child abuse. I don't know in which region.
One of our parts.
Okay, superb. And he's helping directly children to not be abused, obviously. How does he do that? By pushing people to recognize signs of abuse when children are there, so they can warn you, send a message, do something.
And to do with this information to inform to the administration.
Okay, and report it back to the administration.
Partners in the society
Uh-huh.
to detect.
Superb. So you're doing a sort of network of people who can check on childs who might be abused. Okay. Have you understood all the problem now? I think it's good. We can understand. We can already think about solutions to help you go even further. Huh? Because your brain is actually a super good machine for solving problems. The main issue is that most often you don't start with the problem. So no one put his machine starting. If I was formulating now, how can I help people detect child abuse as soon as they see another child? And if I was giving you 2 minutes, I'm pretty sure you come with at least 10 solutions to help you do that. You're already doing that in your project, but that's how powerful your brain is. And that's the same for everyone else. So let's take another example and see if we can understand the project in less than 30 seconds. Who wants to try? Please.
Okay. Competitiveness in SMEs.
Competitiveness in SMEs, okay.
Okay. Who will help SMEs as the backbone of the European economy?
Uh-huh.
What are you going to do for this? Creativity labs to boost innovation, because we know that innovation will boost competitiveness.
Okay, so do we understand it already? I'm sorry, because people in the front, obviously the noise, the volume is a bit lower. Have you understood it so far? Yeah? So the problem is that a lot of SMEs are not competitive enough on the market. Competitive means they are not efficient at making profits enough, and so they are drowning in the competition. Competitiveness is a very difficult word to understand for most people in the world if you don't have yourself a company or if you're not working in the big system, but that's what it means. So they are helping directly these underperforming SMEs by organizing workshops, I think. Creativity labs, so workshops and trainings, so that they can develop new techniques of innovation, become more competitive, and generate more profits. Do we understand that? I think it's pretty clear. Huh? So because we start with the problem, we understand why their solution is actually fitted. But knowing that the solution is in 3 pillars and 20 chapters wouldn't help much. You know what I mean? So great, that's 1 minute of your thinking on this particular problem. Now I'm going to ask you to do 4 minutes of thinking. And there's going to be the level 1 of storytelling. So this particular structure of storytelling is not yet our template, which would be, let's say, level 3. But that's going to already pave the way. So we are using the same thing. This time it's 4 minutes. It should read 4 minutes. Have you heard about an elevator pitch before? So an elevator pitch is a way to pitch any business idea. And the whole image comes from pitching it while you're in an elevator riding with an investor. So this guy has potentially 10 million euros. How do you sell your idea? So it gives you the 10 million euros while you exit the lift. At least he will check your website. So it works like that. Our problem is that these people, you always talk about someone, because we are working with human beings in general, so that's the most important thing ever. Do or do not, okay? Some people do certain things and you should correct it, or they don't do it yet. So people don't yet detect child abuse in this case.
Don't tell it.
Yeah, or don't tell it, extremely interesting. So our project called something, you put your name, which is a series of workshops and labs to train people. Platform of detection and communication campaign on that, yeah, a campaign to push people knowing that. Help them do that, so you fill it with what you have. And what you're doing all there is so that people can do something else. Now it's a little bit empty, obviously it's difficult, it's abstract. But you're going to do that in 4 minutes. And it starts now. And after that, I will ask you to do the same exercise and pitch it back to me. Yep.
Which is now?
So your project, which is a platform, or which is a marketing campaign, or which is a... Okay. Top. Okay, finish your sentence. Good. Who managed to finish the small exercise? Yeah, plenty. Great. I tricked you. You didn't have 4 minutes, but 2 minutes 30. So in 2 minutes 30, most of you already finished putting your project into this particular structure, because the structure helps you think faster, and having a timer is obviously very good as well. Who struggled very much? So I can help one person who struggled. Yeah, but you didn't do the exercise. The two in the front, everyone can notice they were just talking to each other. Maybe later, we'll see. But no, one person who actually focused during 2 minutes 30 to do the exercise well. Tell me, it's very good now to practice. Yeah, please. I think you told me you had an issue, so let's try it, and then I'll see what the issue is. So speak loud so everyone can hear you.
I will say what I put in the items. And our problem is that we have a lot of resources.
Please, everyone listen well, because it's important. I'm sorry. Start again. I want it to be clear.
Our problem is that we have a lot of resources in wastewater that are not used. So our project called Twist, which is an innovation project, help entities, the wastewater entities, to use that resources so they can treat water in a more efficient way, and also give them other uses such as agricultural.
Okay. Okay, we'll start again from the problem, because I'm afraid I didn't catch exactly what it is. So just tell me again and I will help you reformulate it. Yeah, so the water that we used and is thrown through the sewer. Yeah.
As for instance, nutrients
Okay, superb.
and other things that can be recovered.
Collected. Okay, superb. Can we understand it better now, the problem already? Yeah? Wastewater is wasted while it still have interesting properties and nutrients that can be used somewhere else. Okay? Next. Who doesn't use that? Or who is the link you're working on?
But we need innovation to do it
Efficiently, okay. Who needs innovation?
the entities that treat the
Okay, so wastewater plants, wastewater managers and...
for instance, it can be a municipality that is in charge of
Okay, superb. So our problem is that wastewater management authorities or entities do not yet know that there are plenty of things they can use in wastewater. They know it, okay.
They don't know
How to valorize it, right?
Yes,
Okay, do not yet know how to use efficiently these nutrients in wastewaters. Okay.
efficiently and properly. You can say also improperly.
Okay, excellent. So they don't have the right techniques and methods to recover the good nutrients of wastewater. Okay. So our project called Twist, I think I heard. Okay, which is what? What do you offer to them? Yeah, innovation project. But what is more, even more deeply, innovation in what sense? Your consultancy, you give them advices on how to do that, or you?
Okay, we will create 3 living labs.
Okay, so it's a testing, prototyping company or organization.
We will make prototypes
Yeah, super.
to recover the nutrients.
Okay.
See if it works.
So it's a testing and prototyping lab or pilot project to test new recovering methods. Okay. Help them. So I can complete it and you tell me if it's right. Help them understand that it's cost efficient and possible to adapt in their facility, right? So they can valorize the nutrients that so far were wasted and possibly earn money out of it. Do we understand the project now? Yeah? I think it's proper. It fits the elevator pitch. Actually, there's nothing that doesn't fit the elevator pitch. You might need to tweak a word to make the sentence flowing better. But if you reformulate your project along this structure, you're already making it much more intelligible for yourself and obviously for the people you're talking to. Did anyone has a kind of revelation or epiphany in his own project by putting it in there? Be honest with me, because I've read the questionnaire and I couldn't see one project that could explain what he was doing in one paragraph. I couldn't read it. And sometimes I had guidelines, framework, sustainability, Horizon 2020, blah, blah, every word in the same sentence. That was the actual length of the paragraph. So I couldn't understand it. But I really want to understand it. Do you think that could work better?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it can as well. You can leverage 10 million euros for any new tech innovation with that sort of structure as well. So that's the level 1 of storytelling. I said there are 3 levels of storytelling in this particular training, so level 2. Level 2 is where you will never be proficient, and I will explain why. There are actually 3 big components of a great story that any storyteller in the world know how to leverage. Storytellers are actually trained to tell good stories. So storyteller could be a journalist, 5 years of study, maybe 5 or 10 years of practice before getting the actual skill of writing well. A filmmaker, someone who makes a movie, is telling stories, 5 years of school, 10, 15 years to actually make a good movie. What else can we have as storytellers? Even a blogger, the time a blogger can actually write and get a community, it's at least 5 years of experience. Most often it's a big failure in the first 5 years, not because people don't get it, but because you're not good at it. So storytellers. one of the big things they use is the capacity to draw us in what we call another universe, which is credible. So another universe means it has its own rules and you believe in it. Every time you're reading a book, you're actually believing everything that is in this book works. It could be in space. Well, not yet in space, but it works. You're happy with these particular rules. Setting up the rules for a storyteller is very important, especially when you're not describing direct reality. If you've been reading or watching Harry Potter, it doesn't exist, but you believe in it. Once you're into the story, it's okay. The second thing is the capacity to mirror what the characters are doing. So giving so much meat and feelings and the rest to your characters that people really emotionally engage with that. Emotional gravity. You believe that guy is actually facing that challenge. So whatever book you've been reading, think about the main character. I'm pretty sure you're always planning what the guy is gonna live or how he would solve that situation or how yourself you would eventually solve the situation if you were in his shoes. So that's what happens in most great books. If you don't get that, it's actually why you say it's a bad story or bad book. It's because you don't believe in the characters. And the third one, it's a little bit more complex, but that's 2 + 2 versus 4. So that's a complex thing for storytelling, but I'm saying it anyway. When you give everything to a reader, the guy gets bored. If you give clues and the person finds the solution by himself, then you make him participate, and that person is involved in the book, in the story, in the press release, in the movie, in whatever you are passing as a story. So what I'm saying is that everything is built like that in stories. That's narrative transportation. Star Wars doesn't exist. It's not a universe that exists, but it is consistent from movies to movies and books to books, so you believe in it. Up, have you seen this movie? Yes. Well, that's emotional gravity. I cried when his wife died. I mean, the guy is a 3D character, but I really cried. That's emotional gravity. So let's watch a couple of minutes of one of the best storytellers now in the world, who actually wrote the script for that, wrote the script for WALL-E and for half of the Pixar movies.
A tourist is backpacking through the Highlands of Scotland, and he stops at a pub to get a drink, and the only people in there is a bartender and an old man nursing a beer, and he orders a pint, and they sit in silence for a while, and suddenly the old man turns to him and goes, "You see this bar? I built this bar with my bare hands, found the finest wood in the county, gave it more love and care than my own child, but do they call me McGregor the bar builder? No." Points out the window. "You see that stone wall out there? I built that stone wall with my bare hands, found every stone, placed them just so through the rain and the cold, but do they call me McGregor the stone wall builder? No." Points out the other window. "You see that pier on the lake out there? I built that pier with my bare hands, drove the pilings against the tide of the sand, plank by plank, but do they call me McGregor the pier builder? No." "But you fuck one goat." Storytelling is joke telling. It's knowing your punchline, your ending, knowing that everything you're saying from the first sentence to the last is leading to a singular goal, and ideally confirming some truth that deepens our understandings of who we are as human beings. We all love stories. We're born for them. Stories affirm who we are. We all want affirmations that our lives have meaning. And nothing does a greater affirmation than when we connect through stories. It can cross the barriers of time, past, present, and future, and allow us to experience the similarities between ourselves and through others, real and imagined. The children's television host, Mr. Rogers, always carried in his wallet a quote from a social worker that said, "Frankly, there isn't anyone you couldn't learn to love once you've heard their story." And the way I like to interpret that is probably the most greatest story commandment, which is make me care. Please, emotionally, intellectually, aesthetically, just make me care. We all know what it's like to not care. You've gone through hundreds of TV channels, just switching channel after channel, and then suddenly you actually stop on one. It's already halfway over, but something's caught you, and you're drawn in, and you care. That's not by chance, that's by design. So it got me thinking, what if I told you my history was a story? How I was born for it, how I learned along the way this subject matter. And to make it more interesting, we'll start from the ending, and we'll go to the beginning. And so if I were going to give you the ending of this story, it would go something like this. And that's what ultimately led me to speaking to you here at TED.
One thing you will say in the rest of the talk is, make me care. I promise this is worth your time. This is the biggest equation for any storyteller, is to promise something so that someone follow through enough to actually deliver that value. So you promised you're going to read a great adventure if you're reading a book of adventure, or you're watching a movie, it's romantic, it's comedy, I want to cry, I want to laugh, okay? So all this promise is made by the storyteller at the very beginning. This is why I want to tell you that you will never be good storytellers, unless you spend the next 15 years doing only that. Are there anyone in the room who's writing a book at the moment, for instance? As a hobby, for instance, a fiction book or any sort of books? No? Shooting a movie, directing a movie? Apart from the crew at the back of the room who might do that. These are form of storytelling that takes years and years of experience. What you are doing as communication officers is not writing the story. It's talking to these guys so they start to tell your own stories because they are super good at that. This is what a communication officer does, triggering others to get an interest and ideally amplify your project and story, because these guys are good at doing it. Journalists are the first ones. These are usually your main target when you need to amplify your story, because journalists are capable of writing an actual article that people read. So I wanted to say it's not what you're supposed to do. So what are you supposed to do in this case? Your job is to make good storytellers care. And that will help you do just that. We're going to see a little list of storytellers. It's not limited to journalists or documentary filmmakers or other people like that. There are plenty of people who live by selling stories all the time. Politicians are a very good breed of people who sell stories all the time. Most politicians, if you've been surrounded by politicians, I think at your regional level at least, they have 3, 4, 5 stories per year, max. And the guy is just repeating it in every context. So if you're the same audience, you get really bored, but most often they change of people. So no one knows, they only have 5 stories. What do you want as a communication officer is to be one of these stories, because the guy is going to repeat it to thousands of people over time, and possibly tell it to other journalists who are going to tell it to even more people. You want to be one of these stories. You want your project to be in the pack. If you're still interested into becoming a storyteller and you have 15 years ahead of you, I recommend that sort of resources, okay? That's a very good platform. You can check it, but that takes time to be efficient. Now, the right kind of story. As I said, I'm sharing all the resources afterwards as well in an easy manner. So the right kind of story for you, what is it? Well, there are 3 big things you can understand about anything in life, is that you can live directly this thing. That's amazing. So you have a project. Who have been inviting journalists to actually visit the project? Maybe you're not yet there, but you might be. So who will do that? Yeah, great. So what do you expect by inviting journalists to leave the project itself? Okay, so end of the chain. The step just before, you're inviting journalists, so you're spending money to invite journalists. What do you want them to do? To tell a story, right? So if they tell a great story of that day in your manufacturer, or I don't remember exactly what was your, tourism in smaller areas, they feel great. They think like, oh my God, this project is amazing because finally we have a solution to mass tourism, which is also helping the economy directly and the environment. They might write a great article. Where are you based with this project?
9 different areas. Spain, Italy,
okay.
France, and Albania.
So let's say we have a guy from El País going to visit one of these new locations, making an article. How many people do read El País? About 2 million per day. So you're touching with one story 2 million people in one shot because you convinced a journalist to live a great adventure and tell that story. Okay? So now you can do that, make them live things. This is what they did in Portorož with me in Slovenia. They put me on a boat and visiting projects, so I was like, hey, that's so cool. I love it. And they were great wine. So the story is what you get. Now what you can do right now is a story about the story. I know it sounds complicated. I still didn't get a better name than that. That's when you're talking about the entire problem, the solution, what you put in place, how it works, the proof it works. So that is a sort of self-sustainable story. You can share that one to anyone else and they would understand what you do in 3 minutes. That's what Pepsi did. Pepsi didn't invite journalists to actually go visit the stuff. They filmed and sent them the story about the story. What did we have of over case study before? Don't remember. The Pigeon Air Patrol. So if there were journalists that they were on Twitter, they actually experimented the whole thing, they build a lot of stories, and now to continue, they build a story about this whole thing that happened, okay? So we are focusing on that one, the story about the story. Let's see how it works. You have 7-step scripts. You've seen that. It's called 7 because there are 7 steps, and each step has a number, so the steps are just detailed there. The first thing you will notice is that we always start by the big problem. We need to understand the scale of it. Then we get onto the specific. What are we talking about exactly? You remember it's like influence and concern. You can't say I'm going to change climate change, I'm going to revert climate change. That's completely impossible right now. So you're more specific. I can contribute by changing the practices in tourism so we have less pollution. The insight is always more complex, so I don't want you to get too focused on that. It's when you learn something about a human being which is quite universal. So in the case of child abuse, you said something brilliant, which is an insight, is that even if people notice it, they don't necessarily say it. Why? I'm pretty sure if you have data on that, that people feel a bit ashamed. They are not sure if their talent to recognize that is actually true. They are not sure how to deal with the authorities afterwards. They don't want to be too messed up in a situation that doesn't directly involve them. So there are plenty of reasons, human reasons. I think one of the most powerful is that people are not sure it's actually child abuse and they should report it. So that's an insight about human beings, how we think. The solution, pretty straightforward, you will see. How it works, proof and brand. So I will go from one to the other and show the case study we've already seen.
We need shelter, food, light.
Ang mga puno ay nag-iiyakan sa gabi, mahirap makabili ng petrolyo.
Unti-unti ko na mayroon ng hope sa dami nung tumutulong sa amin, and then the light, the scam, andito na po. Hawak-hawak ko na po.
You start to notice the structure. You start to see it, how it unrolls from problem to the actual final thing. What is very funny about the branding stuff is that in the European Union, we are the proudest people in the world. We always start by ourselves. Like, hey, I'm actually that project. We do great things. I'm one of the best in this sector. What do you think? I think you're a jerk because you don't start by actually telling how good you are. You start by delivering value, helping people, and afterwards, once you've shown that you already do that, you put your brand, and people think, hey, that person is actually amazing. Never start with your brand. That's completely useless. People hate you because of that. Okay, let's watch another type of cases. This one is pretty emotional, the Pepsi one. Emotional cases, usually they don't have a voiceover, no one narrative on top of it because it's so humanly present that just good text, fade in, fade off, very subtle things make you believe in it and you're very emotionally connected to it. So there are three types of cases. The classic one, it's a good project, nothing special. You need to tell the story. That happens with lots of projects. It doesn't have to be exceptional all the time, but you still need to tell a good story about it so people learn about it. The data-driven projects, usually these are super complex projects with a lot of layers and strategies and numbers and tech innovation and whatever. Do you need to make it simple so that anyone can understand it? Not really. Most often you need just to target it to the right people. So I took an example of a very complex scientific project that is still told in 3 minutes and that is super interesting for scientific journalists in this case. I'm not talking to everyone on the planet, but to people who are already interested in science. So it's not because you're putting it in that structure that suddenly it becomes something for 3 years old. It's still a structure that helps you pass the message to the right people. And finally, you have the emotional ones, as I said. Usually it's a touching project. If human beings do not react to your project because they just use it like, hey, okay, it's fine, I'm drinking a Pepsi, you don't really make it emotional. It's emotional because they saved life of people who didn't have any water or electricity. So if you, do you think you have, one of you, a case which is emotional, a project which is changing human trajectories, helping people overcome big challenges? I think yours is completely in, Ricardo, sorry, I think yours is completely an emotional case, right?
Every
it could be.
We are involved are emotions.
Imagine that. They are helping to prevent child abuse. So obviously I would definitely try to reach this sort of engagement because it can.
But also all the people and disability. And
don't add challenges. For the moment we are taking child abuse. Superb. So let's watch a very complex data-driven project, which is only for a specific audience, in that case, scientists. And I took, it's not an Interreg project, but I think it's a FEDER project.
Lasers have been around since 1962 in various industrial forms, but in the last 2 decades they have exponentially grown in intensity, and facilities of ultra-intense lasers are opening everywhere in the world. Europe had to equip itself with the most advanced technology to keep a lead in the global research race that is driving fields such as fundamental physics, cancer therapy, or nuclear fusion. As part of one of the European research mega-projects, the Extreme Light Infrastructure facilities will open their doors in 2019 in Romania, equipped with the world's most intense lasers. 2 beams of 10 petawatts each that will make the science of ultra-intense laser converge with the science of nuclear physics. In the little time it took to go from feasibility studies to actual construction of the Eli NP lab, the power of lasers is increased by a factor of 3 worldwide. Ultra-intense lasers are extremely focused beams of light that are put in collision with matter. This collision generates properties of physics that are usually observed in stars in the cosmos. The point of collision creates electromagnetic fields similar to the sun for fractions of seconds and huge amounts of data to analyze. This means that using these lasers, we can replicate in miniature the physical phenomena that are happening on an enormous scale in the universe. The data later feeds applications in medicine, with the foreseen emergence of smaller devices to treat cancers by proton therapy. It could be used to accelerate particles in facilities smaller than the massive particle accelerator of the CERN, and even reduce the radioactivity of nuclear waste. These technological advancements all start by putting in contact ultra-intense laser beams and matter in the condition of a lab. The construction of the facility itself is a work of art, with specific attention to contain vibrations to a micron, or less than 1/10 of the width of a human hair. As of today, the lasers are already tested at lower intensities in Bucharest. The Extreme Light Infrastructure Lab is at the forefront of the research on lasers and nuclear physics, and has already attracted more than 150 researchers from more than 40 countries in its construction phase. It is known across the scientific community as the most advanced facility of its kind, and has been generating a great excitation in the field of fundamental physics worldwide and in the European business community.
Heavy, huh? But would you say you understood more or less what the project is? Quickly, who can tell me whatever you heard about it, or what keywords you remember, or what feeling you have from that? Lasers, yeah, good. That's a good starting point. What else? Okay, cancer, so potential usage, great. Is that a big project or a small project? It's a huge project. Is that super advanced for Europe, or it's quite normal type of standard thing? Super high advanced, superb, excellent. So that's the whole idea of this particular case study, is to generate excitation in scientific journalists, so that instead of saying we spend a shitload of money doing a big thing in Bucharest, which is not easy, we made the best scientific facility in the world in Europe. And they are actually in crisis communication because they spend a lot of money for that. And there's not enough researchers who want to come, because unfortunately Bucharest is not as exciting as Stockholm or other places in the world. So with that sort of case study, they generated press articles that worked. What I mean is that it can feel very heavy for you, but for the people who are interested, some journalists actually watched it 5 or 6 times non-stop and started to call back the facility saying like, we want to visit, we want to visit, we want to visit. Each case study can be adapted. If you have a very complex project, you can use that. Okay, I'm showing a last one, Interreg, from Northern Ireland, so I'm not sure how it's called, the Interreg program there, but it's one emotional case. Once we're done with that one, we go on to our template, okay?
Teaching Divided Histories was a unique opportunity to look at the Troubles in Northern Ireland. It's a time to allow the students to focus on what they can do in the future.
We do tackle the controversial issues and teach pupils about their own history.
Immense pressure. I don't like it. More opinions. It was nerve-wracking.
Recognise that there is a need for support in teaching about issues that could be controversial or events that could be controversial.
So what do you think about cohesion policy after you see one of these cases? It's pretty good to spend money there, right? It was a 300 1,000 euros project, so quite small in comparison with some of yours, I can imagine. But you see a little bit the attraction they had in the press already because of the project. And now you show that case study to any policymaker and they will tell you, yes, we want to support the cohesion policy. It's actually built only for that. That's DJ Regio building cases to get you more money for the next years. And it actually works because policymakers remember, like I remember this thing in Northern Ireland and that was amazing. And the youngsters, that's what you do. If you want to have your project featured somewhere and people talk about it, that's a great way of doing it. So let's do it. I'm jumping to the slide. Case study, making one. Please take your template. I'm gonna put a timer. Your job is to fill the template. Normally it's pretty obvious in terms of recommendations. Each time you have a little sentence that tells you think like that. If you struggle with the third one, well, let it go for the moment. And try to reach the end, okay? So you will see one thing interesting is the proof it works. Each time I'm showing how it works, so I put you some things you can measure. When you're doing the project, you're in the middle of the project, you will need to measure things at one point and say it at the end of the project. These are things you can measure all the time. And I know also another thing which is very difficult for a lot of people is at the solution part, you get on a little bit crazy in explaining the solution. There are not that many solutions in the world to problems. Training is one of them. Building, prototyping things is another one. So I suggesting things. If it doesn't fit, well, put your own solution. Okay, that's the fourth one. I'm putting the timer now for 8 minutes. And if you have trouble, you just raise your hand, I will come. Top. Okay, good. Who managed to finish? 2, 3, 4 people, okay. Who's almost at points, at least 5 or 6? 6, probably? Okay, a lot of you, great. I don't have much time. This is why I speed it up. You had 5 minutes 30. But 5 minutes 30 seconds, I'm pretty sure you're already quite advanced. That's called the Parkinson law. The more time you give yourself, the more lazy you are. The less time you give to yourself, the faster you work. So put yourself timers when you work. It's much less painful. Who think this structure is crap? So we will try to actually work on it. So you don't believe it, it doesn't apply to your project. I want a challenge. So that's the structure. Who has a big challenge or wants to push it to the next? By the way, what is going to happen once you finish this script? You put it back, you put it on your desk, you wait for a day, you reread it once, okay? You correct things and it has to flow. You have to think like if it was a narrator telling this story. Once it flows, you read it to someone else. If this person is actually getting the point, what was your project, how big it was, great achievements and all that, and get excited and tells you, oh, I want to know more. What happened? Can you show me pictures? Can you show me anything else? You won the game. You won the game with anyone. And you can do that with your partner, so you finally understand what you do in life. So that's quite good. How it works. Let's deal with a complicated case. So who has a big complicated case? Or someone who wants to do a video soon? Who wants to try? The more you try, the more you get good at it. Come on, let's go. Anyone? Okay, great. Yeah, you see, I have watched you and the pressure worked. So tell me a little bit about the, you want to read it entirely or you, yeah?
Whatever.
Okay, great. So speak very loud and we listen to you.
Okay, so the problem in our project is additive manufacturing or 3D printing. Is not well known and is not being used by companies. In the specifics, it goes to plastic processors and mold makers that can use already this technology and be more cost efficient in their daily jobs. So that would be the insights I put, is the technical persons in the companies that can be more efficient and also more creative, because it allows many ways of producing new things. And how we are going to make it is with a platform, a web platform for connecting companies to talk about it, training materials, and demonstrator to demonstrate the technology is feasible. And we also build a roadmap for policymakers. Well, it aims basically at connecting people, increase the knowledge awareness, and demonstrate possibilities. And the proof it works is the hardest part for me, because it should be at the end of the project probably. And if I have to tell it now, I can also only say we made many events and many workshops with companies. But in the end of the project, we expect that people have in-house technologies, have the technology in their house, and that's also the vision. In the future, we expect every company to have a
3D printer.
3D printer or additive manufacturing.
Superb. Did you all listen, could hear? Did you understand the project? Yeah? So 3D printing, do you think it's a classic tech or emotional case study? So more tech, but you made it easy enough to understand, so that could be a classic one, which is actually a good progression when it's very technological. I would say the solution, what is the solution? Very much it's a training people in companies.
It's kind of 4 parts, because it's training material, platform for exchanging, and demonstrators for interacting, and also a roadmap, technological roadmap.
So we created a platform where any company can learn about the technology. We can go to their facility to demonstrate it and help them implement the processes to start 3D printing at a lower cost and faster, thanks to our services. I'm good, huh? The proof it works, that's obviously when you're in the middle of a project, you are not yet sure how it worked. But what you're doing as communication officers is setting up KPIs, key performance indicators you have to pass. So in the next years, we need to have at least 50 demonstrations into companies. And we need to have a traffic of 3,000 visitors per month onto our platform who wants to get information about 3D printing. And we want, over 2 years, to have 20% of the people who come to a demonstration to actually adopt one 3D printing process in their companies. You fix the KPIs. By the end of the project, you can deliver on these KPIs and say that was an amazing success. So you can do a case study when you start. It's actually one of the most powerful thinking technique ever. You start by the end, which makes your whole project super flowing for everyone who works with you. People understand it, they have the vision, and they know how they go forward. So now what can you do with that? Well, you can immediately, I think you can finish rewriting it. Tomorrow you rewrite it a little bit. You could immediately ask for a voiceover artist to say that, or with one of your colleagues who is having a great voice. Voiceover, again, that's a job. So take an actor, it's much better. But if that story can be told to anyone else and that person is like, oh my God, that's super cool what you're doing, then you won. You just have to collect the images afterwards. So that's the next thing. What do you need for making a case study like that? First of all, you need a script, otherwise you don't have anything. If it's emotional, what you wrote will inspire the titling, the sort of images you will find. Emotional are the most difficult to do because they're also the most powerful one. People associate memories with emotion. So once you have an emotion, you keep the memory very much. So what do we need? Lots of visual assets. As communication officers, how do you make visual assets happen? I take just 5 minutes and we stop. So sorry for the match. Lots of visual assets. How do you ensure you will have lots of visuals by the end of the project? How do you do that?
Register everything.
Sorry?
Register everything.
Yeah, record everything as much as you can. If you have a visit organized, you need to have videographers in the visit as well. So they collect a lot of images. Usually it costs around 250 euros per day for a freelance videographer who deliver you 4 hours of footages. That's amazingly good material when you are at the moment where you need to build a video, because you already have the videos. Everything you need to prove, you need to think about it. We are going to collect press articles if there are press mentions, Twitter, whatever, things that show that people were interested. We had 10 politicians coming in at one point of the project, and 3 of them used it as examples for whatever. Here you have to be creative. What you're showing is that it worked. People do not remember that, but they remember it worked. Okay? So lots of visual assets, that's how you do. Lots of proofs, that's what I just said. Think about your proof before. So build your case study when you start the project, so you will have by the end of it the most powerful tool of communication ever. If you release it in the middle of the project, the same thing. People get interested already. You don't need to wait the end. And finally, you need to understand the problem yourself. If you can't feel that as a communication officer, it means because you don't understand your project well enough. So you go talk to the people of the project until you get that straight. Once you get that straight, you can do your job well. Okay? I will finish on the mission I was telling. Your job is to make storytellers care. That's the most powerful incentive you have. So once you have that great, you can talk to other storytellers. And the whole idea is to make it in less than 3 minutes, not 20 pages of report, because you don't read that, they don't read that. That helps them understand the problem, the solution, and know it worked. So the storytellers we are talking to, and I will conclude on that in a little video. Journalists, I already told you, that works super well. Politicians, these guys are selling stories. That's what they do as a job. I worked with them a long time. Policymakers, that's kind of the same thing. A policymaker who's thinking about a big legislation needs some framing. They need some sort of idea of what you're doing. The cohesion policy stuff, just the video of Northern Ireland is going to bring money to Interreg for the next years. That's just one project among 10,000. But that's already a very powerful argument for a policymaker. Other communicants eventually, your friends, all the people in the room, now your old friends. Bloggers, same thing. Bloggers are becoming now good storytellers, enough to spread the message. Documentary filmmakers, that's the best thing you can have. A documentary filmmaker is someone who invests his own money and the money of a producer to tell your story on a format of 52 minutes, shared on TV. That's the best performance you can have. Conference organizers, same thing. You need to place your scientists or the people working on the project in conferences. How do you persuade these guys to accept your guys? You need to convince them. Better to convince them with a 3-minute video or even a good press release written around this template to make them actually accept your guys. That's great communication work. So once again, you've seen my name all around. As I said, my name is weird. On LinkedIn, it's easy to find. I'm publishing a lot of videos on concept of communication that every communication officer should know, but because you're not trained usually in schools of communication, you don't know. So I said, I'm not gonna always say to people, I'm sorry for you, don't know, I'm gonna just produce things to help them. So it's only 10 minutes video. It's fast, I don't earn any money on that, it's just because I'm a bit pissed off of reading bad stories. My email address, you finish that, you digitalize it, you send it to me, I'm gonna correct it, feedback you, okay? I will only have 2 or 3 people in the room who will do it, but these people are gonna make a bigger step forward. Every one of you, you can do that. I'm letting a last case study, if you have 2 minutes, because it's brilliant, it's emotional, it's beautiful, it's Hewlett-Packard in Brazil. If you want to leave, you can, but I advise you to see it. So in Brazil, there are 13 million people who could not read and write, so they couldn't tell their stories.
Você já ouviu falar na Copa de Asa, né?
Se não tiver coragem, não é caçador.
Queimei ele, pisei, bem pisado, fiz um pó assim. E todo dia eu fazia um chá e dava para ele beber.
Agora comece a falar o que você quer escrever.
Quanto tempo faz que a gente não joga aqui carteado? Ganhei mais uma netinha agora.
Eu queria abraçar o mundo inteiro para ter certeza nesse momento que estaria te abraçando. Te amo.
Eu sinto saudades, Zé. Ganhei mais uma netinha agora.
Eu queria abraçar o mundo inteiro para ter certeza nesse momento que estaria te abraçando.
O projeto transformou histórias de 30 desses brasileiros em livros, só que com a ajuda da tecnologia.
Essa é a minha história. Fora as outras coisas que eu não contei nem conto.
Thank you very much. I wait for your emails and use that.